I'll call the January 30th work session to order. The first thing on our agenda is a presentation of the county's audit by Julie George with Rushton and Company.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. So most of you know me. I'm Julie George with Rushton, and I'm here this evening to present the county's annual financial report for the fiscal year ended 6/30/2024. I wanted to give you a heads up on what you have in front of you. We, of course, have the presentation on the screen, but you also have a bound copy of it. You have a full copy, also bound, of the annual financial report. A lot of pages in there, so we're going to primarily stick to the presentation, but definitely, if we need to get into that report any further, we can. And then you have two letters that we issue. One is a letter of communications that we need to make the board aware of, required by the standards that we follow, and the other are recommendations that we have just based on the work that we come out here and the things that we see as we're out here performing the audit in the various departments and constitutional offices of the county. So I'm going to first start in the presentation. So if you want to go to that, starting on page 2, we're going to start with the independent auditor's report. And the auditor's report is on pages 1 through 3 of that large bound report. And just wanted to point out a few key things about that report. One is that it is an unmodified opinion. You may also hear that called a clean opinion. That means we did not have to make any modifications to the standard report on financial statements in regard to the county's report. So in other words, that means, in our opinion, the financial statements as presented in that bound report present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the county at June 30, 2024, and the respective changes in financial position for the year ended June 30, 2024. That's definitely the kind of opinion that you are looking for, and it is the same opinion that you have had in the past. The auditing standards that we perform our audit are those in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America. And because you are a local government, we also perform our audit in accordance with the government auditing standards, which are issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. A couple other key points that report mentions are that the financial statements are the responsibility of the county's management. Our responsibility as your independent auditors is to express our opinions on whether the financial statements are fairly presented. And that is the conclusion based on our audit procedures that we determined. Moving on to slide 3. I forgot about that, sorry. Moving on to slide 3, we've got a slide where we want to just spend a few moments talking about the government-wide statements. Those are on pages 12 through 14 of that bound report. And these statements provide information on the county as a whole. So you've got a column of governmental activities and business type activities. The business type activities are the county's solid waste fund. The governmental activities is everything else combined, general fund, SPLOST, narcotics, all of your funds combined, but transitioned from the modified accrual basis of accounting to a full accrual basis of accounting. So that means if you were to compare these to, say, the general fund and the SPLOST statements, you're going to see that these statements have capital assets, your buildings, vehicles, machinery, equipment, your infrastructure, your roads, your bridges, as an asset, whereas at the fund level, those are expensed as the payments at expense are incurred. And you'll also see that the county's debt, the county's net position of the pension, whether the net pension liability or asset, is also reflected on these statements. And pages 12 and 13 is a statement of net position. That would be like a balance sheet, if you're used to that terminology. It presents the assets and liabilities of the county, as well as the residual net position of the county. And then page 14 is the results of operations. So that's where you're going to see the county's revenues and expenses. One thing I wanted to touch on with the next slide is actually the net position of the county. And on slide 4, you'll see that we've got a slide, the net position over the last 5 fiscal years. So I wanted to spend a few moments talking about the types of net position that the county has, but also talking about the trend in that net position. So the county's net position, as you'll see, is broken out into 3 separate components. The first, in that first column, is the net investment in capital assets. So that's all of the county's assets that I described by class earlier, bridges, roads, cars, vehicles, buildings, land. Net of depreciation to date on those assets, and net of any debt related to the assets. So that's the amount of net position that the county has invested in its capital assets. The next column is restricted net position. That is going to be primarily coming from your restricted funds, your SPLOST fund, your narcotics fund, those that are restricted as to purpose and what the county can spend that on. And then the last type is unrestricted. So that is both in a form that can be spent or soon to come in that can be spent, such as receivables, not invested in capital, something that you cannot spend, and also not restricted. And what I think is very positive is that you'll see over the last 5 years, every category increased from one year to the next. So if you look at that total net position, the county did end 2024 with a total net position of $382 million. So over the last 5 years, I mean, that has climbed up from 146 million. And the way that happens is that last column on the right, your revenues have exceeded your expenditures each year. And that is how you increase that net position over time. And in just this past year, 39 million was the excess of revenues over expenditures. Okay, moving on to slide 5. We have the general fund. The general fund, of course, is the county's main operating fund. That's probably where you spend a lot of time looking at budget to actuals month to month and managing and projecting those revenues and expenditures as a board. So a good bit of what you see in those government-wide statements is coming from the county's general fund. So I wanted to also show you here that trend, and you'll see it's going the same direction. Revenues, the blue line, have exceeded the green line expenditures over the last 5 years. And although expenses have gone up over 5 years, as I'm sure you've noticed personally as well, the revenues have still stayed above those amounts and have also continued to increase. So again, that is how the county has managed to build its fund balance, which is the next slide, 6. And so you'll see the same trend with the general fund balance. The blue line is the total fund balance. The green line is the unassigned. The unassigned is not committed by the board to be spent on anything specific, and it's not restricted to be spent on anything specific. So that is what would be available for operations or capital, whatever the board decided that needed to be expended on. And you'll see both of those have continued to increase over the last 5 years. Again, very positive trend. I calculated the months of general fund expenditures on that unassigned fund balance It did go up 3.9 million over last year, and that means the county has about 6.6 months of unassigned fund balance as of June 30, 2024. I think that's very healthy. I don't think it's too much. If you think about your property tax calendar, you know, we're measuring this as of June 30, 24. If other revenues were to decrease, if expenses were to increase, the county has, you know, 6.6 months worth of general fund expenditures that it can use in reserves if it needed to. And if you think about the property tax calendar, that would get you to December, which is when your property taxes would start coming in or be in by with the December 1st due date. And that's one thing I like to gauge that by. Of course, how much do you need? There's a lot of factors, as we've talked about before, that have to be considered in that. So there's no exact science of how many months, but based on, you know, where the county is, I think 6 months is a very healthy place to be without being in excess. Okay, on the next slide, we've got a pie chart of revenues and other financing sources. And what I like about this pie chart, and what I think is a very positive thing to note about this pie chart, is that the county has multiple sources of revenues. So yes, you'll see property tax, like most county governments, is going to be the largest piece of that pie, but there are some other substantial pieces with lost tax following. And you'll note this year there were some transfers from other funds. Those were $10 million that came from the ARPA funds. So I just wanted to point out that teal blue triangle substantially came from ARPA. If you remember, the government changed the final rule on the ARPA funding that allowed you to use up to $10 million of your allocation toward revenue replacement, meaning that you could turn in general fund expenditures and let ARPA pay those, and that's what the county chose to do. So that $10 million in this fiscal year that we're looking at was moved to the general fund and is no longer restricted, though the county has committed some of that for capital. Another thing to keep in mind with that $10 million being in FY24 is that it does swing the percentages a little. So for example, if you were looking at the prior year or even next year, because that $10 million was one time, you'll see that property tax percentage go up. I think last year it was 47%. This year it's 41%. You'll probably see it closer to 47% next year, since that $10 million won't be coming in. Okay, moving on to the next slide. We've got the general fund expenditures by function. This basically just breaks out the total expenditures in the general fund for 6/30/24 into a pie chart based on the function. And as you would expect, based on your knowledge of county operations, and as we would expect based on you being a county government, public safety sits over 50%. That's common even in municipalities. And if you think about a county government, you've got the additional cost of operating the E911 system. So it's not unusual to see, you know, that exceed that 50% level. And of course, that's followed by judicial. As a county government, of course, you've got a lot of courts that you're operating. And the next two, of course, being general government and public works. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Because, as I mentioned earlier, we also perform the audit in accordance with government auditing standards, that does require us to issue an additional report, which is on pages 107 and 108. And that report describes the scope of our testing of internal control and our compliance. We don't give an opinion on that, but we do look at that in planning our audit and performing our audit, and we do, of course, bring to your attention anything significant that we find. There were no new findings in that report. The county does continue, of course, to have the segregation of duties risk that we've talked about in the past, and That's a risk you need to be aware of, and that just means that there's some departments and constitutional offices where there's not enough personnel to properly separate the duties as you would like them to. So, for instance, you may have a constitutional office with one accounting role, and that accounting role may be collecting money, depositing money, and maybe also taking it to the bank, performing the bank rec. So you would probably need about 4 people in a role like that in a department, or especially one of the constitutional offices, because they have their own set of books. You would probably need about 4 people just to separate those out, and that's difficult for most governments to do. This is probably one of the most common findings that we see in governments and also in small businesses. Your finance department has sufficient staff in it that you don't see that separation of duties risk there, but primarily in the other departments and the constitutional offices. On the next slide, 10, because the county receives federal awards over a certain threshold as defined by the uniform guidance, we do have to test those federal awards. So you have an additional report on pages 109 where we have specifically looked at your compliance and internal controls over some of your larger programs that are financed with federal awards. We do express an opinion on compliance, and that opinion was unmodified. So again, like the other unmodified opinion, that is the kind of opinion you're working towards and have been able to achieve for many years. We do also look at the internal controls over the major programs. We did not have anything significant that we needed to report. Next, we've got a slide about the current reporting changes. GASB 100 was effective for governments for June 30th, 2024, and we did assist the county in this implementation. There's a disclosure within the report that describes that. Basically, that changed the presentation within the financial statements when a fund moves from non-major to major and vice versa. So if you're looking in front of the notes, most of those funds that you see are going to be major. The non-major funds, and all of this is based on threshold amounts defined by GASB, are combined in a column. But as numbers change, that can change. So they've basically just changed how they want us to present that. And I also wanted to cover just upcoming changes, and that is GASB 101. That is going to be effective for the county for this upcoming fiscal year, June 2025. And that is going to impact the accounting for compensated absences. We do have a webinar coming up that I'll mention. We've either already invited or will be inviting some of your employees to, and that is where just another step we're taking to help governments prepare for this. And with the recent change to PTO, I think that this is probably going to be a simpler application than it would have been previously. So that's not why that was done, but it's just something that when I noted that was happening, I thought, okay, that's going to make things a little easier because you've gone now to one bucket of time that we have to look at versus multiple. And I have sent or have listed to send that webinar to Alicia and to Ms. Blackman, but of course if they have any other employees they would like to attend, we will definitely include them as well. And then additionally, I'll sit down with them one-on-one after that, and we'll go ahead and take a look at that before it's audit time. Any questions? Anything you want to go over further? I know I went through that fairly quickly for the amount of information that is sitting in front of you.
Ms. George, thank you for the presentation, and I appreciate the time that you spent on the slide regarding the fund balance And I wanted to highlight that again because that's a question that I've typically asked you every year. How do we look in fund balance? How do we compare to other counties? One of the things that you had described to us before is that every county obviously has its own unique position, net position, and maybe the timing of when taxes come in. You've given examples of other counties that could have a year's worth of fund balance and not necessarily your opinion to think that they had excess, if you will. I'd like to point out that ACCG recommends that we have a minimum of 3 months worth of operating capital and reserve. That's not a target, that's a minimum that they're asking you to target. So we've got double the target, but we're also half, if you will, of maybe some other counties that could have possibly a year's worth of revenue sitting in fund balance and not necessarily have too much. And I understand that may not be an apples to apples comparison, but to the taxpayer that could think, hey, you're hoarding money, you've got too much, not just giving the example that, yes, I think you're in a good position, but putting that 6 months in perspective to other counties that may be half of what some others have got, and they still don't have too much, but we're also double the amount that ACCG is asking for there to be a minimum in reserve. So I really think the 6 months, not saying we couldn't go more, but I do agree with you that 6 months is very healthy. But I wanted to point out those comparison in those numbers of what that 6 months actually looks like in comparisons to ACCG's recommendation and what other counties may be doing as well.
Yeah, well, you are correct. That is a minimum fund balance. If you were under 3 months, I believe that you would be concerned. You know, how healthy is the county? What if something happens? I have worked with the county for a long time, and I have seen the county in a position where they've had to get a tax anticipation note. I've seen the county get in a position where they weren't sure they would be able to cover operations without the October insurance premium tax. So I live here. So as a citizen here, I'm very happy to see how healthy my county is now because I've seen it opposite of that. As we've talked about before, I think it depends on a lot of factors. Volatility of revenues, you know, how much are you relying on property tax? What does your debt look like? So it is really, as you said, hard to compare apples to apples because, you know, they're not apples to apples because you've got to consider all of those things. I think the property tax calendar is important just because of what I've seen. Like I said, wondering, you know, do you need a tax anticipation note to make it or a line of credit? I've got a city government right now that gets a line of credit at the end of the year because they don't have, you know, much fund balance reserve at all. And I feel I'm kind of giving a very generic answer and may not be going to the direction that you want, but if you're asking what would you tell a taxpayer, I think it's that, you know, it depends. Now, the board could, if they were interested, set a minimum fund balance policy. That's not something that has been done in the past. I have seen that before. I've got some municipalities that do set a minimum fund balance. And that is, again, something that you would all have to discuss and determine, you know, what would you want that number to be. It's not a requirement. If you do set that policy, it is a requirement that we disclose it in the financials. But a lot of things factor into that. You know, does the general fund have to support any other funds? Unfortunately, we see that sometimes where the general fund has excess, but other funds are struggling, and it may have to help support those funds. E911 has been that way before. You know, what debt is there to pay? Because again, even if that debt is to be paid by another fund, when it comes down to it, you know, the taxing power that the county has is going to end up the general fund, you know, covering that debt. And again, revenues and expenses just being volatile right now. So I think that would be my answer, you know, to a taxpayer is that we think we're in a healthy place, and if it continues to increase, we'll, you know, kind of have to look at where we are as a whole at that time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have one question. On your expenditures, I know that the public safety always runs about 50% or so. So in the other categories, do they look normal for a county our size?
They do, yes. And again, it varies a lot based on what a county offers. But if you're looking at the main ones, public safety, public works, judicial, and general government, I would say those are comparable. Now, obviously, when you get into things like culture and recreation is a good example. Culture and recreation just really depends on what your government offers. Some have a rec department. You know, you guys have some really nice parks in the area. And, you know, some may have theater, cultural arts. So that's one that can swing a good bit. But I would say the others are comparable to what we've seen in the past. And definitely the public safety is comparable. Public works, I think it depends. I mean, also, when you're looking at comparison, you know, are you comparing to a county that has T-Splost, for example? So there's going to be some other factors in there, again, to make sure you're comparing apples to apples.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. And I wanted to just take a moment and thank the board for engaging the firm, and also thank Commissioner Morgan and Alicia Searcy and their teams for the help during the audit. They do a lot of work during the year, keeping things in good order, and also in preparing for us and just being very attentive to us when we're on site, and even after we leave site and we're following up on things. And we just want to appreciate the efforts they put in to make sure this is a smooth, efficient process. Thank you.
We'll now move to our financial recap, and I'll call Alicia Searcy, the Finance Director, up.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We have before you this afternoon our financials as of December 31 of 2024. At the end of December, we had collected $55,758,703 in revenue compared to last year where we were at about $53 million. Our expenses through the end of December were $38,132,000 compared to $34,912,000. The revenue compared to budget is 69.77%. Last year we were at about 72.83%, so we're running a little shy of last year. I think we're still in good position to make our revenue budget. We aren't running ahead as much like we were last year at this time. Our expenses are pretty much right in line with where we were last year compared to budget. Our expenses are at 47.7% compared to last year at 47.68%. On the SPLOST, we're going to look at the 21 SPLOST first. We've got a lot of expenditures coming through the 21 SPLOST at this point. We're starting to make good headway up at the administration building. We've got $716,509 in expenses there. We're wrapping up the Villa Rica Fire Station. You see a lot of charges on there for the concrete, so that was kind of the final stage there. We had $541,368 on Station 9, and we purchased another fire truck, pumper truck, for $574,681. The rest is pretty much road-related supplies. And then on that back page, you'll see the SPLOST revenue, and then the interest income and the payments out to the cities for their portion of the December collections. The 2015 SPLOST we only had a few expenditures there. Those were related to LMIG and the replacement of the sign at Tanner, where we had an insurance claim on that. So that's the conclusion of the financial report. If anybody has any questions related to that.
Ms. Cersei, you may not have this information in front of you. I don't expect you to answer it, but one thing I had, if you're not aware, but under it's on the general fund on expenditures, under the debt service, under the capital lease. Looking at those numbers, we're over $399 by what we had budgeted for this year, which was just a little bit more than our prior year budget.
That was the extra payment that we made right at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
Out of last year's money.
Okay.
That we made to pay down that lease.
Okay. Did we do like 500,000 or?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Alicia, while you're still there, why don't we go ahead and get down to the business session part and just go ahead and do the budget amendment?
Okay, we advertised our budget amendment, first budget amendment of 2025. This is related to the compensated balances, compensated absences, where we've changed our paid time off structure and paid down the liability that we owed to employees that had time that had accrued. It also includes the school resource officers that the sheriff had gotten approved back in the latter part of 24, and it includes the veteran treatment court budget. So that's on that grant fund. Within that, we are asking to move a part-time person to a full-time position, and that is funded through that veteran treatment court. So in addition to the dollar amounts of the amendment, we're also looking to change one part-time position to a full-time position.
And that's a reimbursable grant.
It is.
Are y'all good with putting that on a consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alicia. We'll now move into the business session part. 10.1 is a technology fee for probate and state courts. And there, I was going to say, we have Judge Haney here to present this.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here with you. This year, the state court and I both would like to apply for a technology fee. That's local legislation. We've both spoken to Tyler Paul Smith, and he's willing to carry that legislation for us. And I believe Judge Hubbard has talked to Tim Bearden, who will sponsor it in the Senate. The magistrate court passed a technology fee in 2017, and I started looking at it a couple of years ago, but just really talked to Judge Hubbard just a little bit, really for some consistency, for one thing, because the magistrate court already has one, but also because this year, for my court at least, we will be going to the legislature or the probate court council to apply for mandatory e-filing. That'll be established over a period of time, but it'll require us, for equal access to justice purposes, to provide stations in our court for the public to be able to e-file. And so that's one thing, just to kind of prepare for that. It'll involve some hardware and software over time. And then also this year, we transitioned from, we've kind of split our fingerprinting. We do fingerprinting in my office, but also for renewals, we've had to get it from the sheriff's office. Well, this year, the GCIC changed their programming, and we had some issues. The sheriff's office had some issues using my number, our probate court number, to run fingerprints at the sheriff's office. And it wasn't either one of our softwares, it was the GCIC. But if we had that in-house, we won't have those issues. And so we've applied to be a terminal agency so that we can do all of our own fingerprinting in-house, and the sheriff's office won't have to do that for us. So with that, that's another reason for that the technology fee could support. And then also this year, the probate court council completely restructured and revamped probate probate court fees. And those fees are essentially revenue neutral, but they're just a big shift in the way that we do our fees. And so I thought if we were going to do a technology fee, now would be the time to do it, because our attorneys and the public are getting used to our fees changing, and just putting that in at the same time makes it easier than having to make a change again next year or the year after. And so again, because we were doing that, I know Judge Hubbard and I had talked about it once before, and so I just asked him if it would be easier if we put our legislation in together. So it's my understanding that our resolution from our commissioners is just a step that makes the other legislators as well as our local legislators more comfortable that we've run it by the Board of Commissioners and that you're on board with us. And so we would ask for a resolution supporting that legislation. I do understand from my executive director that our fees will actually be, our bills will actually be two separate bills, that's the way it has to be structured, but we can have one resolution that covers the both of us. So we did ask for $10. That's what the magistrate, Representative Smith had recommended $15. That's what Haralson County did last session. But the magistrate court had a maximum of $10, and that doesn't mean that we'll be charging a $10 fee, but it covers for 10 years. And so that just gives us some leeway over the 10 years, and we felt like we wanted to be consistent with magistrate court, so that's what we asked for. All right, any questions for me?
Judge Haney, I appreciate, I've spoken with Judge Hubbard as well, that y'all have
Good.
gone through and looked at a lot of, especially in his court,
Yes.
that fee structure, either things that we were not charging for at all in comparison to other counties, or the fee was so much lower than others that didn't make sense. And so I think we take it seriously anytime we're proving to add something onto someone's
Absolutely.
bill. But in the same note, if everyone else is doing something comparable or charging even more,
Right.
It makes sense for us to not be behind, because like you said, those technology pieces are so important.
Well, and we did look at, I looked at, you're seeing every legislative session. I've been watching a little bit because I knew this was something we were considering. And every legislative session, there are more and more courts coming through with the technology fee. And so you do see kind of a wide range of what's available. And I feel like ours is on the lower end of the numbers that you're seeing. So we want to stay reasonable and not be, a huge increase.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, well, thank you. I appreciate your consideration. Good to see you all. All
Are y'all going to put this on a consent agenda for Tuesday night? Okay, great.
right, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, 10.2 is actually two parts, so one and a two. We have Loy Howard, the president and CEO of Tanner Medical Center, and Gabe Agan with Raymond James, and then we'll turn it over to Stacy Blackman, the county attorney, at some point. So, Loy, if you want to come forward, you and Gabe.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, appreciate the opportunity to come today. Carol Cruz is joining me in representing Tanner Health System. I was looking through the history, and it's hard to believe this will be the 8th time that I've come and asked for the support of the Commission to support our bonds over the last 30 years. So, my, how time flies. You have a handout. I'm not going to go through every page. You'll be happy to know. I just want to key on a couple slides that I would like to talk about as it relates to the support for Tanner. You hopefully know about Tanner, but we're proud to be headquartered in Carroll County. We're a 5-hospital system serving close to 500,000 people. There are over 3 counties in Georgia and 2 counties in Alabama. We have 40 practices that are spread across that service area. A few facts about Tanner: 4,500 employees, 2,000 deliveries, 21,000 surgeries, 130,000 emergency room visits, and over 500,000 visits to our Tanner Medical clinics. One thing that you may ask over the years is what kind of investment, a return on investment, has it been for Carroll County to support Tanner over the years with its bond issues? And I think this slide really hits home, in my opinion, the impact that healthcare makes. Usually we're talking about quality of care, the things that are most important, patient satisfaction, but economics of healthcare are also significant. The first one I would reference there is the number of medical staff members is now 814. I remember the days of 60. So it's grown dramatically. They estimate that every new physician coming to the community will create up to 20 jobs through support and needs to help that physician take care and practice medicine. So that, the Georgia Hospital System's economic forecasting model, that's 9,400 jobs that Tanner supports each year. And this is where the economic impact is pretty significant. The annual impact of Tanner Health System is $1.9 billion. So it's an important part of the region and the economics of the region. We're also very proud of the charity care that we provide. We're a community hospital. We're here to take care of the entire community. And that's something that we're very proud of. I'm not going to go through all our programs, but our need for expansion has been driven by a number of things. It's been the growth of our cardiac program. It's been the growth of our OB program, our NICUs, our surgical programs, our cancer programs, has all, put a good bit of pressure on our ability to take care of all the patients that need care and want care. We're always reminded that our patients have opportunity to go anywhere, and so we want to earn their business to take care of our patients. Also, we had that unfortunate time period called COVID, where we really got an appreciation for the need for care when, for the first time I've ever seen in my career, Atlanta hospitals were not available to help if we got too busy. You really had to rely on your community hospitals, and I think we worked hard to try to do that. But that has all kind of come together, the growth of our services, to make us realize that we really need to expand our services, especially in the area of inpatient beds. So in your handout, there's one slide that shows a rendering of the Carrollton facility, just very briefly. That's going to be a 3-story tower, adding 50 beds. It's 95,000 square feet. It's located over the existing ED. When we built the ED, we stressed it so that we could go up floors. So we're happy because going vertical is really the best solution for the Tanner system, given the limited space that we're working in. We anticipate that being ready in 2026. That will also allow us to backfill, as we call it in our business, the critical care functions that are really growing. There's tremendous need for more ICU beds, cardiac beds, and so forth in other parts of the hospital. And that's about $75 million. The next one I want to mention to you, and thanks for keeping up with the slides, that's perfect, is a picture of the rendering of Villa Rica. This is still being finalized, but that project is going to also be significant as we're seeing a good bit of growth in the Villa Rica area. That'll be $80 million. That'll be 4 stories. It'll be made up of med-surg floors, but primarily our investment there will be in women's health and women's services. Fundamental to any community hospital, successful one, it's investing in women's services, and that's what we're proposing to do there. It will also allow us to add 27 more same-day surgery beds, and as I mentioned, more med-surg. So, it's a good problem to have, but we certainly need these, and these are very, very important projects. And I wanted to stop there and see if you have any questions of anything I've said or anything in this in the information I have presented.
Mr. Howard, thank you for the presentation, and I really like this colored brochure. It's very informative and a good summary. I had a conversation earlier with yourself and your CFO, Ms. Cruz, and I appreciate that time. One thing that I'm satisfied that we talked about, obviously this is a large bond amount for us to back, but one thing I was satisfied is that you all, not only your track record, but you do have a very robust system in place, not only with your staff, talked about your management team, there's not high turnover there, so you've got a lot of institutional knowledge, your ability to adapt that we all had to do through COVID, and the possibility at different times that you use outside consultants or third parties to help it analyze. So for me, it's a big deal to make sure backing something like this, if there was something going awry, we didn't wait 5 or 6 years to figure it out and then you're going the wrong direction. So I think you all have proven by your track record, but most especially what you explained to me today, that you have the in-house capability to make sure that you stay on the right track. One thing I did want to bring up as well is I did speak with our finance director, Ms. Cersei, and just wanted to make sure that the backing of this would not do anything to hurt Carroll County or our ability if we needed to do something for ourselves in the way of bonding. And the way my understanding is that the way we sit now, financially stable, and you as well, that us backing these bonds, which some are refinancing as well, would not do anything to hurt our credit rating or our ability to function as a county as things sit. So those are a couple of my comments, and I thank you for your investment in Carroll County.
One question I got, as far as growth, how far out do you think this 50-bed addition will take us into, as far as providing for our community?
Yeah, that's a great question. You'll see in there where we do a 10-year study kind of on beds, and we think that will probably take us out to 2028, 2029.
Okay.
Fortunately, we're growing, and but it will take care, it'll take care of us, at least right before 2030.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Other questions we can answer? So I think we'll turn it over to Gabe. I will say that we, as you know, I know many of you very well. If you have a question anytime, I hope I'm one of the first persons you'll call to give you answers and information that you may need about the TANF system.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, Chairman Morgan and Board of Commissioners. It's good to be here this evening, and certainly appreciate the relationship I've had with the county over almost the last 20 years. And I really enjoyed hearing Julie present, how well the county's doing financially, because I was part of those earlier years where the fund balance was not where it needed to be, and certainly have grown to be a very healthy county with a world-class hospital with Tanner. And just to talk a little bit, I'll get into some of the slides and cover some of the points, but just big picture, worked with a lot of community hospitals throughout the state of Georgia, and I can't think of one that is strong, for certainly clinical quality and just quality of care, but financially, is Tanner Health System. I kind of look at three categories of hospitals. Under Georgia law, we're going to talk a lot about the 7 mills and the tax back end that any county could pledge to keep, an essential county, the health care in your county going. But, you have a lot of like rural hospitals in Georgia, the small ones that are lucky to keep the doors open, where the county is actually paying costs, not just pledging money behind the contract to keep them going. And often they'll end up going to like a larger system, a regional hospital. And then you have, kind of the next tier, the functional, when you look at like the revenue, the bed size, 100 bed, maybe the ones that are self-supporting, but maybe low investment grade, that just, they may lose a bunch of money one year, next year they'll be okay, but overall, financeable deals. That first tier, they don't have access to the capital markets without the county. That second tier does, but the county really helps them. But, Tanner is just phenomenal. If you look at their financials, the last few years through COVID has been devastating to healthcare in particular. You think, well, COVID, how are hospitals, people get sick, is that bad? But no, I mean, the elective procedures have gotten postponed, and financially, I've had some systems smaller revenue than Tanner says have lost $90 million in some years. And Tanner has been flawless. Maybe some years down a little bit more than normal, but just have done fantastic. So now I'll just jump into some actual numbers here and just kind of, I know the number does hit high. If you think 140 million, the actual not to exceed bond amount is higher than that, because we might be able to refund part or all of the 2015s to save some money, and also allow us to make some document changes that are beneficial to Tanner and also Carroll County, in my opinion, too. So page 22 just kind of hits some of the highlight, but you can go back. I'm going to hit more, but the next one just shows over history. As Lloyd mentioned, he's been coming to you for 30 years, and even going back that far, there's never been any history of the county actually having to pay under these intergovernmental contracts. Tanner Medical has totally been self-sufficient, and the way this issue is going to be structured is their revenues pledged first, and the only way the county would have to come and pay debt service payments is if the funds aren't there from Tanner. Okay, this just goes, 24 just kind of the slides were much better he had. They actually look cool, but there's some of the money is going to be spent on there. And then page 25, we start getting into just, I know you can't see this, maybe in the book it's a little easier, but this is just Tanner Medical Center's existing overall debt, including a small amount that does not have the county support behind it, some like smaller leases. You know, generally speaking, Tanner comes to the county for its larger scale bricks and mortar type projects to do tax exempt financing. I'm going to hit some of the ratios because I think the two things you probably want to make sure as the commissioners, you know, one is Tanner over borrowing to where they're going to be like financially risky or over leveraged, and then two, like Commissioner Chance had asked, you know, is this going to put you in a worse financial situation, and is it going to impact your ability to borrow? So I'm going to answer those. I think ultimately the answer is going to be no, but page 26 just shows the county-backed debt. I'm sorry, page 27 actually is the one with the county-backed debt. So right now, Carroll County has $150,875,000 outstanding of 7 mil supported certificates. So this is a sizable increase, but as I'll show you later, you know, the tax digest has grown and grown and grown. I think the last, hate to say major ask, because the 20 issue was 33 billion, but in 2015, the new money portion was 75 million. But if you compare the tax digest growth, you know, and just inflation over time, you know, the ratios are not at all out of line here. So after the issuance, we're looking at about 283 million, but basically we always like to look at the total debt service just to simplify it. And this is what would be outstanding with the county support behind it afterwards. And from one thing that Moody's and S&P will be asking about, and investors, just the ability to cover, in the worst case scenario, if there were no funds available from Tanner and the county had to support this, could you cover the debt with that 7 mils? And the about 1.88 times coverage is what you're looking at on that, which is very comparable to after the 2015 issue. So just back to that, kind of grown as a community into being able to support that extra debt here. Okay, now these two, the next two, and these are actually a little maybe easier chart format, so not so many numbers that just kind of run together here. Two of the key ratios that investors and I think anybody just a good gauge of financial health of a health care system is MAD's coverage. That's maximum annual debt service. Basically, what's the total maximum payment of all Tanner's debt outstanding? Not just the debt that the county is directly behind, but the other leases and debt. But after this issue, the last year would still be close to 6 times coverage with the new debt factored in here. So that's very strong coverage in line with, you know, high quality Moody's medians rating. So just not to go into every one of those details on that chart there, but certainly able to support. And one thing that I didn't show is if you go the years before, the offering document that we're working on that Alicia's working so hard on in Carroll to go to market with these bonds has a longer history. And what I think is even more important than just this one is just the track record of the past. So this isn't just like hey, we had a great year, but last, you know, it's a very solid history of stable finances and ability to service, you know, the additional debt, not even factoring in any of the new revenues that will hopefully be generated by the additional beds and improved facilities and hopefully just the future growth of the community. This is just based on the historical revenues. And I like the debt to capitalization. Basically, the way I look at that, it's just like kind of like loan to value. Like if I used to use an example of a $100,000 house to illustrate this, but that's not really a thing anymore. But with the new debt, they're going to have less than 25% pro forma debt to capitalization. So, you know, we'll take it up. So if you had a $200,000, well, well, $200,000 house, that would be, the equivalent of having about a $50,000 mortgage on that. So with this additional amount, 25% debt to cap is very strong, and lower certainly a better ratio than higher on this, but compared to a lot of the neighbors, even the larger systems, certainly, really low with the new. So it's 140, maybe comes off some sticker shock, but it certainly, I think, supported by the financials here. And then the next one just shows, one thing is kind of interesting, the tax digest growth. We've kind of gotten used to these nice spikes over the last few years, and I think that's another, would use the importance of keeping a good fund balance, because things could go down some. We see back in the earlier years, we had some dip after the big recession, but if you average it out, about 4.25% over the last 20 years. So we just kind of keep growing nice and steady, that tax digest. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about interest rates. There's a couple charts in here. Overall rates are pretty close to the historical, slightly, even though they've come up a lot the last few years, slightly below, kind of where the historical averages have been, but pretty close to average at this point. So that's just going to kind of be what it is. Page 32 is probably the last one I'm going to spend much focus on and let you ask questions. The main reason that you consider doing this, I know it's been the way we've done this for 30 years here, but it's the choice. It's a community hospital. The partnership's been good with Tanner, and they've kept the burden of having a fund health care off the county. And this gives you the choice. Do you want to put that backing? Tanner can do this on their own. They have never been rated, like publicly, but seen enough to see their finances. They would be a very high quality rated and wanted bond on their own. But you have to make that comparison. Would you be, if things turn bad, you're still going to be behind them. Why not go ahead and just take that benefit and keep those dollars here, instead of paying out a slightly higher interest rate to, investors that you have to pay to loan you the money through bonds. So anyway, it comes to millions. I'm saying probably the best case savings is 25 basis points. Like some of the other ones are more because the underlying health system's not as strong as Tanner. So, it still comes to millions of dollars over the course of time here. And just a couple things to point out, this does not count towards the statutory debt limit. Georgia law allows you to issue up to 10% of the tax digest, so, you have $506 million. I don't see the county ever needing to issue that much yet, but this would not count against that. In terms of like the rating agencies and the other views, it's a more complicated. This is debt. I'm not going to tell you. It's more like a contingent type liability. So they look at Tanner's underlying strength. And one thing I think even the Moody's report say is what could put pressure on your rating. If Tanner starts having weaker financials and it becomes a higher risk, it could have some impact. But as strong as things have been, and the economic engine and this other things they focus on, high quality jobs. You got to make that decision, but I certainly think that it's a net positive when you have a healthy health system, and I think at this point there's pretty low risk that would have to pay under that intergovernmental contract. I've spent a lot. I did have just kind of the rough rest of the schedule here, so assuming that we vote to go ahead and back this. The last slide here is 33, but the plan is we're actually having our rating communications next week and finalizing the offering document. Our plan is to go to market February 26th and then have final rates and terms and be back before the Board of Commissioners with the final pricing on the Thursday, February 27th, and then close about a month later. So that's where we're at right now, and and just kind of right in the middle of it right now, just trying to get everything document-wise where it needs to be. Any questions?
Mr. Agan?
Yes, sir.
Health systems often can partner with other health systems for whatever reasons to help benefit the community, obviously. There's nothing in any future partnerships and working with other healthcare facilities that would do anything to jeopardize the liability or change the liability, if you will, on the county's perspective from a bond.
I think we're getting yes, it happened, and it's been over the last 10 years, lots of, and especially, examples where the system might have weakened financially to where they want to partner with a larger system. But there's a lot of, ultimately, it's always subject to kind of the final negotiation, which I'm sure if it gets to that point, with the hospital authority and appointees, it'd be, probably not to say, I would say a community decision, but the debt, I guess you could probably, certainly the debt stays with whoever takes it, if that makes sense. The county contract doesn't go away. Now, often in terms of the sale I know we're not, this is hypothetical,
Yes, and I'm not trying to lead down any road. I'm just talking about, I'm not even talking about, I'm just talking about simple
often the bonds are just agreed to pay off.
I just want to make sure
if you think about it right now.
Just the main liability, which I think you answered.
Yeah, of course, this is accounting but it's a monumentous threshold. I think it was Tanner crossed $1 billion in assets over this last year, which is a precedent, and the debt's far less than that. So the short of it, yes, the debt could be, part of the terms would be just to make sure that the debt's paid off. Well, we have seen some situations, I know, for example, not as strong financially, but down the road, West Georgia, probably 10 years ago, they became part of Wellstar through like a member substitution, and they just joined their obligated group to where they had to pay, and then eventually they refunded and took Troup County off that. So there's a lot of different ways, but you're certainly protected that the debt goes away if it goes to any other arrangement or partnership or thinking ahead. Y'all may have more insight on that, but I think it's well.
That answers my question, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
I did have a couple of verbiage changes, a recommendation that I talked with Ms. Blackman about earlier. Nothing that would be substantive in changing the aspects of the agreement, but a couple of the language portions that dealt with the indigent portion, and then language about not exceeding the 250 million, which is the intent. But just shoring up some of the language that Ms. Blackman is working on, but I don't have anything past that. Thank you.
Okay.
I have one question. It may be a better question for Mr. Howard.
Okay.
As far as future growth and where this takes us, and where do you think, as far as Tanner's overall picture, that you might be a timeline that you'd have to come back before us to ask for another back end? And do you have?
Oh, it'd be years from now.
Okay.
This is going to, try to answer your question a little bit better that you asked earlier. I think the next major service that we're building right now is neurosurgery.
Okay.
But these facilities would allow us to meet that clinical program. So I'm confident you won't see us for years.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Hopefully good news.
Don't go away, Mr. Howard.
No, we're not
I want to follow on to what Commissioner Bailey, he asked pretty much the same question. I was doing some quick arithmetic up here. And at our current, if we continue to grow at the rate we're growing now in Carroll County, we could hit 190,000 people in about 7 years. Do y'all do those sort of studies?
Absolutely.
All right. Do those numbers match up pretty close?
They track. Absolutely.
Okay. And you feel like this, and how many beds did you say this would add?
It's going to add 50 in Carrollton and about that many in Villa Rica, so 100 beds.
Okay.
And then it's the domino effect of the ability to expand critical care units and so forth. But I will tell you that we see it as our job is to stay up with the healthcare needs of Carroll County as it grows.
Okay.
We see that's our job.
All right. Thank you. And I guess, just to make it simple for me, bottom line is 283 million.
The county will be behind you. Yes,
okay, but now you've rolled some other bonds.
That's the plan, and I'll tell you, some of that's very interest rate sensitive. The 215 not to exceed amount, we have to validate these bonds that Stacy, that they're working on the process as we speak right now to make sure they're legally issued. But it depends on the interest rate. We don't want, the refund is going to save money, and it's going to allow us to do some document changes that are beneficial, but we don't want to cost, so depending on where rates are, we may refund 30 million of it, we may refund 40, we may refund all $62 million. But it's a net wash, if that makes sense. So 140 is the net new, if that makes sense. So the higher amount would be simply reducing the 2015 issue that we expect to save some money to do and take away some of the contingent backing of the county.
And what is the life of the bond?
30 years.
Okay.
Final maturity is July 1, 2055.
Okay.
Stacy, would you like to present the TEFRA resolution?
Thank you. We'll have two resolutions in connection with the bond financing. One is to authorize the intergovernmental contract that was just discussed for the bonds. And then also the IRS, under the TEFRA Act, requires a public hearing for any tax-exempt financing to make sure it's a proper public purpose, and requires a public hearing. We held that, and no member of the public showed up. So that's pretty common for no one to show up. But it requires the local governmental authority to approve that purpose, that it is a tax-exempt proper purpose. And it is here because it's for health care for the, and it includes for the indigent. And we will work on those cleanup changes that Commissioner Chance brought up, just to make sure it says not to exceed $250 million. It said approximately $250 million.
So are y'all good with putting this on a consent agenda with the cleanup of the resolution numbers? Okay, good. Thank you all.
Thank you. Pardon?
We'll now move to 10.3, the City of Carrollton TAD. We have David Brooks here, along with Mayor Kaysen.
Thank you, Board of Commissioners, Madam Chairman, for seeing us, letting us speak tonight and present our ask for the TAD increment, the county's TAD increment for the project we're considering. We also have Erica Studdard, our Community Development Director, is here with us tonight, and then Ben Garrett's listed on the agenda, but he would be here, but he's a little bit under the weather. So told him, yeah, you're going to throw me to the wolves tonight. So you got me, and Will Garrett's here going to present on Ben's behalf. So, and this project really started back in 2020, even before my arrival with the City of Carrollton, when the mayor and the council had the vision and foresight to start acquiring that property down there at the corner lot on Alabama Street and Highway 27. And they purchased that property it's the gateway to our city, it's the gateway to our downtown. We're very proud of our downtown, and we feel like that we've done a lot of great things to improve the downtown area. A lot of folks like to come to downtown, spend time there, spend money downtown. We've got nice restaurants. You know, those that come before us put the amphitheater downtown, and we're now trying to do some beautification and streetscapes and improvements. And so we acquired that property. Then in June of 2023, I stood before this same board asking you to partner with us in voting to approve the TAD district that we had outlined in our redevelopment plan. And that was around June, and talked with many of you, come and visited some of you at your office. Several of you come to my office to discuss it. And I guess, well, it was in September of that year, after negotiations and talking and some give and take, and you know, we got a good agreement together, and we signed that, I think, in September of 2023. In October, after we get that signed, we issue an RFP for that property. We've acquired all the property. We've got the TAD district in place. It is a part of our TAD district. We got the city school system agreement signed. We got the Carroll County agreement signed. And so we issue our RFP in October of 2023. In February of 2024, that RFP is awarded to Lenco Development and Ray Lynn. And at that time, we agreed on an MOU. Our mayor and council agreed on an MOU with Lenco Development, and we're now in the stages of working on the development agreement, which we hope to have finalized very, very soon. They are seeking their financing right now. They put their packets out to look to secure financing, and as part of that, they have applied for the TAD application, which is obviously they can do with it being in the TAD district. This is a full scale public-private partnership, probably the first one the city of Carrollton's entered into that I know of, where we're going to have a lot of skin in the game as well. And we're asking that you guys help support that and help us make this an easier project to develop. And the finished product should be sometime towards the end of 2026, maybe the beginning of 2027. And that's important in what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to try not to take too long, but I really want everybody to have a full understanding of how this will work. And as you know, in the intergovernmental agreement, it was stated that if there's any residential development that this body in the TAD district that would use TAD funds, that this body would approve whether or not that the Carroll County's increment can be used towards that development. So that's what we're asking you to do tonight, is to approve your increment to be a part of this development. The application that they applied for, it includes, this is in the letters of intention, notice of intention that you were sent. The application includes the following: a 99-room Hilton Home 2 Suites, approximately 80 multifamily residential units, and I want to point out they are either all studio, 1-bedroom, or 2-bedroom. Approximately 17,000 square feet of retail and a potential museum space. We're working very hard. The city with Lenco and Ray Lynn are working hard to try to help get that space to be a museum space for our city. And the redevelopment of North Cliff Street between Alabama Street and Johnson Avenue in a pedestrian-only street. It also is stated in the notice of intention, the construction of a city-owned parking deck and conference center addition to the Center for the Arts is included in the overall project. But it's important to note that the city, because it will be ours, the parking deck will be ours, the Arts Center, the conference center, the addition to the Arts Center will be ours as well. We are paying for the parking deck and the Arts Center. No TAD funds will be used for either of those two. When the project's done, we will retain ownership of the parking deck, the conference center, and the pedestrian-only street. The remaining tracts, including the hotel, the multifamily residential units, the retail museum space, that will all be deeded over to the developer. Project will be on, that's about a 2.4 acre project right down there, as I said, into the gateway of our city, into our downtown. The applicant is requesting funding in a single lump sum payment of $2.25 million. And they need it in a single lump sum instead of over the period of the life of the TAD to help with securing their finances. By the bylaws or the application rules of our TAD, this is a $58 million project all in. That's hard cost, soft cost, land, everything is right at a $58 million development. We allow a developer to request 20% of the developed costs, and that, if at the $58 million, that would be $11.6 million that they could have requested. You take out what the city's going to have in it between the parking deck, the land, the Arts Center, some of the infrastructure work. The city's going to be investing about $15 million into the project. So even if you back that out of the development cost, that would put it at $43 million, and they could have, by our rules for our TAD applications, they could have requested up to $8.6 million. They did not do that because they knew that over time that we were not going to back any TAD funds with bonds. We're not going to do that. We were very adamant about that when we asked for the TAD district, and we're not going to do that. And we are willing to pay for the parking deck in the conference center, which will benefit our city and our downtown greatly. So they said, they looked at their numbers and see what they needed and what they could do with us paying for the parking deck, us paying for the art center. They said, well, we need $2.25 million to make our numbers work for this project to pencil and to get it to the City of Carrollton. City of Carrollton will provide that $2.25 million up front from our reserves. And we will pay ourselves back with the TAD increment from the city school system, the city, and hopefully Carroll County once the project is completed. And there's zero interest. We're not going to make any money off of this now or in terms of paying ourselves over TAD. We're not going to charge interest. This is a project we believe in. This is a project that we believe will over time, when it's completed, we will reap the benefits for many, many years to come. Long after I'm gone from here, I think we feel like people will be reaping the benefits. The way this works, and I want to try to be as clear as I can, when this project is complete and it goes onto the tax digest, the tax increment from city schools, Carrollton City, and Carroll County, should y'all vote to participate, would then go back each year to the City of Carrollton, just the tax increment. We will have a worksheet or a spreadsheet that is verified by the tax commissioner that says this was Carroll County's increment, this was Carrollton City's increment, this was the school system increment, this is the total that was collected on those two parcels only, just the parcel for the hotel and the mixed-use multifamily part. We'll sign off. We'll send that to you every year. You'll know exactly what we got from that. And then at the end of the TAD, in December 31st, 2038, if we have not paid ourselves back the full $2.25 million, we've lost. Now we will. I really believe we're projecting that we could possibly pay ourselves back early. So then the question is, what happens if you do pay it off in 6 years? You do pay it off in 7 years. The KB Advisory Group, our outside source that projected the revenue from taxes, they're projecting possibly $477,000 in incremental increase annually. So what if that happens and we pay ourselves back in 6 years? That's about what it would amount to. Then in 6 years, we stop taking that increment, and then that increment goes into the special TAD fund for the remainder of the TAD, which sunsets on December 31st, 2038. I don't have the numbers, and I was sitting here thinking I wished I'd have gotten the exact numbers, but let's just say in 2038, when it sunsets and the TAD no longer exists, then the increment from the $477,000, which will be more by 2038, then that's when the county would start collecting the increment off of that piece of property in those parcels. The Carrollton Redevelopment Authority served as the TAD Advisory Committee. That's by a state. You have to have that by the state laws for a TAD district. Carrollton Redevelopment Authority approved it unanimously to grant the request. Carrollton City School Board then on their, I think it was the 14th of January, approved it at their school board meeting. Our city council approved it at our last work session, and we're asking you to consider approving it tonight. What I would like to do now is ask Will to come up and present to you the layout, the design, the renderings, and the schematics, and then we'll answer all the questions that you guys have.
Good afternoon. As you can see, to orient you there's the site plan that we're looking at. There's the existing Courtyard Marriott and the existing Cultural Arts Center. And as you head west on Alabama Street, if you're driving or walking west, on your right you'll see our Conference Center expansion, which I want to clarify, I think in the agenda it says 4,000 square feet. It's 14,000 square feet. We think it'll hold at least 1,000 people. We'll break it into 5 different break rooms if you need to have separate conference rooms. So that's the plan there. Before you get to the multifamily or mixed-use building, you'll see North Cliff Street, which was North Cliff Street. We are abandoning that and then turning it into a pedestrian promenade. It's about 60 feet wide. It'll have pavers. We'll have vehicular access for certain reasons, but that's what you can see. I think it's titled E there, E and F. And then adjacent to that, we have 80 multifamily units, over 17,000 square feet of retail. The retail, right now, we've designated 4,000 square feet to the city for a museum space. We're working with them on that. Other than that, we don't have a tenant set. We want 2 restaurants, maybe a fitness concept, something similar in there. Across on the top end of the page, you'll see the proposed hotel, which, as David says, a 99-room Hilton branded hotel. So, which also has a pool and an amenity package that we will share, our residents will share in that pool area. If you want to keep scrolling to the next rendering, I'll give you. So there's a different aerial perspective of what it will look like once it's complete. Keep going. That is the street shot from Alabama Street looking north. You can see the hotel in the backdrop there. This will be what it looks like. We're hoping to put a restaurant in the corner. You can see we've come up with a name there. But that's all temporary. There's a night shot. So that's the general overview of the design, the layout. We are 95% complete with design. We'll submit for permit next Friday and go in for LDP at the same time. We plan to start construction 30 days after we can close our construction loan. We've started discussing with 3 lenders. They're all interested. The way it works is what we're working through right now, and so part of their questions are the TAD allocation. So, any questions?
Mr. Brooks, thank you for the presentation today. One question I've gotten, I think I asked this back when you originally came before us, but obviously one of the things that's promoted us giving up the property tax in the moment until everything is paid off is the ability that we're generating sales tax on the front end. So have you done any kind of analysis to give an idea, okay, we know we've got the hotel coming, we're looking to have a restaurant, a couple other things. Do you have a generic idea of what we think that sales tax revenue is? Because that's kind of the silver lining. We would get that on day one to offset what we know we're not getting in the property tax.
I do not. It's hard to get that, and I should have gotten some comparisons from like Brown Dog and some of those, but I can get that for you. That's not in terms of what some comparable restaurants have done. Will, have y'all done any of that in your studies for financing?
No, we've looked at it from the retail. The retail piece, we do have some numbers for reference. We're charging $35 a square foot in rent for this space is what we've underwritten. We feel comfortable with that. I don't have the tax information on that yet. We can get it though.
Okay, thank you. My other question is a bigger question regarding the parking. So my question is the parking deck that you're going to own, is it going to be open to the public or is it not? And then regardless of what the answer is, have you done anything to look at what we're going to build is going to be at maximum capacity of what we're thinking, because you've got all those residential units you're looking to put in. Then you've got to take into effect, is it going to grow in the future or is it not? Are 20 of those 80 always going to have visitors coming in, that you're going to have another car or two? And where I'm going with the bigger picture is obviously we've got the Judicial Center parking here, and then we've got the West Georgia Tech. And I know Mayor Kaysen, having worked next door for many years, understands the parking situation. So I'm just looking at the overall impact. Obviously, you want people in downtown to help with commerce, and we do as well, but thinking about the Judicial Center next door, we're building out the 5th floor, just trying to think of how all those dynamics are going to play. Or are we going to end up with a situation to where we're maximizing or overfilling the deck you're going to own and fill up, and then those people are trying to go elsewhere, i.e. West Georgia Tech one, and then the one next door to the Judicial, and then we're complicating the parking even more. So just your general thoughts on that.
Yes, sir. That's a great question, and I actually have some numbers on that because everybody we talk to, what are we going to do about parking? Even if we're not talking about this, how about the parking downtown? So we actually we started out with a 4-level deck. We looked at everything and we said that's not going to be enough. So it's going to be a 5-level deck that we're going to build there. It's going to be a total of 409 spaces. Now, to put that into perspective, this deck, the courthouse deck, and the Art Center deck is between the two of them is 558. So this one deck is going to hold park almost as much as the two decks combined. Now, like I said, this is a public-private partnership with us and Lenco, so 110 of those will be for the hotel, and 125 of those will be for multifamily. And it's 80 unit multifamily build out. That said, we have been in discussion. We've looked at a lot of other cities. We've seen what other folks have done. We're going to mark the multifamily parking spaces, and our land use specifies how many you have to have for, you know, a multifamily complex, for retail, for those types of things. So we're going to mark those spaces, the ones that are basically closest to the elevator and closest to the entrance into the apartment complex will be marked. There'll be public parking on every level. It's not like we're going to send the public parking all the way to the top, or the parking's not going to be all the way at the bottom. It'll be on every level. We're not distinguishing the hotel spaces unless it becomes a problem. But again, we've looked at what other cities have done. LaGrange most notably has a parking deck right there at their hotel and downtown area, and it has not been a problem for them. So 110 hotel, 125 multifamily. That leaves 174 public parking spaces, which is actually, we did have a parking study done several years ago, and then when we did our downtown master plan, that's one of the things that they addressed. And so that would be an additional 14% increase in parking downtown.
Thank you for those numbers. I'd love to get those numbers if you could share that with me. I appreciate that. The other question I had in regard, my understanding when the deck next door was built, there was some original discussion about making it possibly where it could be added on into the future. And I think Carroll County and the city of Carrollton at some point in time had looked into that, and then indeed it was not built for the ability to add on to that. So is this particular deck going to be built with the capability if you decided to build on it in the future, or will you know on the front end that it will be maxed out based on the structure?
Yeah, it'll be maxed out based on the structure. If we went any higher, then you would have the parking deck sticking out above the facade of the mixed-use development and retail, and that's not a look that we wanted coming into town. And then the higher you go, obviously, the more foundation cost and everything. So, yeah, we'll be maxed out on that one.
Thank you.
But that's not to say that in the future we won't do something for parking downtown. I hope that we get to a point where we have to talk about, you know, building more parking. We're really looking at the parking lots that we have in the downtown area, and that's part of the whole downtown master plan. Is we got a city-owned parking lot down there next to the old fire station, and so if we get things, you know, the streetscape, the beautification, well lit, then folks won't mind walking a block up the hill to the square if they have nice things to pass and have a well-lit path and, you know, those types of things. So we're looking at improving all of our other parking lots in the area too.
All right, Mr. Brooks, you mentioned, you got 80 units. You're going to have studio apartments, one-bedroom apartments, and two-bedroom apartments.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and this is a single-owner building?
Yes, sir. This is Lenco Development is the development group that's building it. Yes, sir.
Okay, and you mentioned LaGrange. I'm looking for a comparable model here. Is there somebody else that's got something similar? LaGrange is a similar-sized town to Carrollton. They have something like this in LaGrange?
Do they have the apartment complexes? And I can let Will, I can tell you a lot of comparables from where my daughter and son-in-law have lived before they moved back to Carrollton, but they're in much larger cities than Carrollton. I don't know of something comparable to this in a city our size, but I'll let Will.
We finished a project in Powder Springs, which you can drive and see is 226 units. It has a separate parking deck, smaller than this one. It's in their town center. We did a town center redevelopment for them as well. Just finished it.
Okay. Where I was going with this is, what does it look like in 10 years? That's where I'm going with this.
Well, we think from an exterior perspective, it'll look just the same as it does when we finish building it. I mean, obviously the wear and tear, but we're willing to take care of it from a maintenance perspective. And then in the interior of the units, we'll have quartz countertops, stainless steel appliances, LVT flooring, the nicer level of finishes. So we'll take care of it.
Okay, well, that's not exactly what I was, I'll talk to you
Okay.
about
So
it there. Yeah.
it's been my, through my research and talking with other folks and other folks and other city managers from different communities, Gainesville would be one that would be fairly comparable. They've done several of these. If you want to keep nice apartments, then you got to put nice things around them. And so these will be the highest rent rate apartments in Carrollton.
Now you're starting to hit where I'm.
I know exactly what you're saying. And so what's going to keep this 10 years from now, us looking around saying, why in the world did we do this? Because it's not been upkept. You don't have young professionals or empty nesters or the folks that we want to target for this, the folks that we want to be in there that's going to keep our downtown vibrant. We want folks in there that's going to be downtown, they're going to walk, they want to spend money in the retail, they're going to spend money in the restaurants and those types of things. So we feel like, and we're putting a lot of money into downtown as well through the recommendations we got through this downtown master plan. So we truly believe that if we build something really, really nice and we put a lot of really, really nice things around it, then it's going to stand the test of time.
I don't know if I overlooked it or not, but could y'all show us where the parking deck's proposed to go? Because I didn't see it outlined in.
All right, so it's hidden.
Okay.
If you'll go back, right there, you see the center, like where the photo is in the center? I mean, can I just walk up there?
I may have, it's,
Yeah, it's got a-
in paper, it's a little bit better, so,
Right there.
right here, in the center, right here, it's in the center of the building. I printed it because it makes a better, but kind of where that circle
Thank
is.
you.
So, it says hidden
Yep.
in the inside of the building.
Yep.
Y'all wanna? Did you-
Yeah, I've seen it. I saw it on the.
Yep, pull it up. So are y'all good with putting this on a consent agenda for Tuesday night?
Look, I got this at 11:30 this morning, and I would really kind of like to take a stronger look at it. And I'd rather wait and vote on this on Tuesday night.
Hey, any other questions for David, Will, or even Betty?
Well, all I want to say is that, you know, the city of Carrollton is your county seat. And when people come to the county, they come to Carrollton, and I know y'all are spread out everywhere, but I think most of the time we only get one chance to make a first impression. And I think this is going to really make, with this and our downtown redevelopment and enhancement, I think it's going to be, and the new administration building, I think it's something we all can be very proud of, and very proud to have people come here, a place where you can bring people to say, this is where our county and city government work together, and this is the product that we got from it. So I really hope that you'll think about it from that perspective. And yes, you're going to give up some property tax, but just think about it from this way. Look at the sales tax you're going to generate. And I know we don't have the hard numbers, but you just think about in the tourism that we've had in this county in the last 5 years, how much it's increased. And with the hotel, you're going to have more room for college events, people come in here, and they're going to spend money in Carrollton, but they're going to spend money in the county getting here. So you're going to have, I mean, to me, it's a win-win. I mean, it's a benefit that we're all going to benefit from, not just the city of Carrollton, but, I mean, yes, that is the gateway to our downtown, but it's the gateway that's going to bring people in to Carrollton, to the new administration building, to the courthouse. So it's not just, you know, we're building this really beautiful building to actually just empower or to improve us. It improves everybody. So to me, it's a win-win situation. And I know, you know, we think about giving up county property tax or city property tax, but we've given a lot into getting this done because it's going to enhance for everybody. But we look forward to seeing y'all and getting this on the road. Thanks.
I got one question before you go. Is your overall picture or view of your downtown redevelopment, what about your other apartment studios? What else? Do you have anything that you know of that's coming in the works that you're going to add others that, or is this just?
Out of what's been approved, there hasn't been any approved since about midway through last year. Maybe a group out of Rome had come in to do a multifamily apartment development very similar to this, but more units over across from Central High School. Okay. Outside of that, there was one approved 2 or 3 years ago right when I first become in as city manager.
So right now, you don't see any more in the future as far as when you start your redevelopment, anything else? Do you have?
Downtown?
Yes.
No, I don't foresee that, no, sir. I mean, I really would like to see how these do in terms of the rent that we'll be charging. This is the best location, so kind of see how these fill up, and, if they're sitting there with half occupancy, then everybody else will see that, and that'll scare some folks away. And if they fill up like that at the rent rates that we're gonna be asking, then we'll probably have some folks knocking at our door. But then, you take the chance then of growing too fast. And we're gonna grow. Commissioner Fuller said it earlier. I mean, he did his numbers and what the total county population can be over the course of time. But, we gotta be very, very guarded in the rate at which we grow. And I think we've done a decent job of that through the years.
Well, that's kind of where one of my questions, where it's kind of headed to, is what your overall view of your growth rate would be, and did you have anything else in plan? So appreciate it.
So, can I ask one question? 6 o'clock Tuesday, will you want the full presentation
So
again?
yes, I'll look for a motion to approve, hopefully approve in a second, and if there's any further discussion, we'll vote on it Tuesday night.
Okay, but not the whole presentation again.
No,
right.
no.
No.
I was gonna say, I can do it again.
No, we won't either.
Thank you.
All right, 10.4, we have a RFQ for design services for the solid waste transfer station. I'm going to call Danny Yates of Public Works to present this item to us.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. I'm here tonight to ask to release an RFQ for design service for a new transfer station building. Most of you are aware what happened on January 10th with our current building. The roof collapsed. And we want to go out for a design professional, I'd like to help me design. I mean, I know what a building should look like, and I know what it should look like, but I think we need someone that has seen these transfer stations everywhere, and and to help us design and also help build a budget. I don't think it would be wise for me just to sit here and say, I think it's going to cost this X amount of dollars. I would rather have a professional to help me say it's going to cost this amount of dollars. And also, whoever wins this will be working with Georgian West. Georgian West has already done some preliminary civil drawings for this, so anything they design will have to go into what Mr. John Bass has done. And we will be having a mandatory on-site meeting February the 18th. If the people cannot make the meeting, then I'm one of them. If you want it, you can make the meeting. If you want this project, you can make the meeting. I don't want to bring someone in that has not even seen the site. I want them to understand what we're dealing with out there. So that's kind of what I am now, and we are in a hurry, but I do not want to rush this project. It's just going to run the normal timeline like we do everything, because we got to make sure we do this right. So this RFQ will run for 30 days to meet everybody's timeline and to meet the board's timeline as far as the agenda and getting it on the next meeting. So that's the plan. We hope, if y'all approve this, we hope to release the RFQ next week.
Mr. Yates, I don't know what kind of calculations you've already done, and you may not have done anything yet that you're wanting to get this professional on board. But one of the things I want to make sure that we do, and I know that you will know this as well as anybody, but obviously future growth and what we look like, but I really hope we will go back and analyze, past trends, what it's looked like through the years, as Commissioner Fuller was talking about, what we're projected, to have with population in the future. I don't want to get to a point, yes, everything comes down to money, but I don't want us to be afraid to tell what we think the picture is and then us act accordingly. We've got a lot of money that we're going to spend on the front end through civil and all these different things, and I don't want to come back in 5 years. I may not be here in 5 years, but this board's here in 5 years and saying, oh my goodness, here we got to go again and start all over adding on. So I hope we will err on the side of caution with making something probably bigger than what we even maybe think it needs to be.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Chance. The current building we have is roughly 15,000 square feet. And I'm we're going to work, and this is where the civil is going to come in a lot. I'm going to be shooting for between 20 and 25,000 square foot building, if allowable, with the property we have to do it. I'm gonna maximize the land we have to put as big a building as we can on it, because we know in 10 to 15 years what our garbage situation may look like in the county. So,
Sure. And one of the things that we get calls on from time to time is stuff you can't help. You were closed for a holiday, and then here comes all the trash the following day, or you've had a piece of equipment go down.
Yes, sir.
That your department's had to go over and assist, the solid waste with.
Yes.
So thinking about not just the growth itself, but what do you deal with in those scenarios where we don't want stuff backed out to the front door? And I know you know all that.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that that is at the forefront of whoever we hire, that they do a lot of analysis on whatever the numbers have been in the past.
Oh, yes, so that was one thing I'd said from the get-go. If we're going to build this, we're going to build it to where in 10 years, 15 years, we're not coming up here looking to add on to this building. This building needs to be built to get us through the next 15 to 20 years.
Thank you.
I guess my only input, Danny, is like we talked the other day, is I definitely, along with Mr. Chance, we want to build what we need and then some, but also I'd like to keep in mind what we are building, what the purpose of the building is.
Yes, sir.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't need a Taj Mahal out there to have a transfer
sir.
station, so.
My whole aspect of a transfer station building is nothing but a metal building shell with concrete walls on the inside of it.
Okay, good. Get plenty big enough, but just, you don't have to have all this.
Yes, sir.
Elon Musk has his way, they'll be bringing it in rocket ship.
If there's no further questions, are y'all good with putting this on a consent agenda for Tuesday night?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
Jacqueline for being here also. 10-5, Fire Rescue Station 12 repair. We have Chief Barnwell.
Good evening, Commissioners, thank you for having me today. October 31st of 24, Station 12 sustained some damage when a fire truck hit the header with a hose bed cover and did some damage to the header at Station 12 through the main bay where the engine parks. It also damaged the garage door and damaged the door adjacent and pushed the header out across the building. We received 3 quotes for the necessary repairs, 2 for structural repair and garage replacements, and then 1 for removal and repair of the existing doors. Both vendors provided quotes for structural repair only, removing the replacement of the garage doors. Through these negotiations, we were able to reduce the cost of repair by $25,000. So originally, the 2 contractors were going to replace all the doors, and through negotiations and getting the doors repaired through another contractor, another vendor, we were able to reduce that cost. They backed those doors out of their original cost. So Barrett and Associates provided a bid of $47,248, reflecting the exclusion of the garage door replacement. West Georgia Gate and Door submitted a bid of $2,300 for removal, repair, and reinstallation of the doors. So that's where that savings came in, totaling the bid for $49,548. I recommend that we select Barrett and Associates because they did come under, and their bid was more detailed as far as the scope of work they were going to provide. As far as for funding for this project, back in June of last year, you approved over $691,000 for much needed equipment that we were able to go get, and that included but did not included Lucas devices, 13 AEDs, thermal imaging cameras, training equipment, and everything else. And after buying all this equipment and negotiating with our vendors and stuff, we had a lot of savings. So I'm asking that we pull from that savings $49,548 to repair the building. Any questions?
Chief, we had a conversation earlier, and it's my understanding that it was an unfortunate accident.
Mm-hmm.
We know when we built Station 9, one of the things that we talked about when we visited everywhere is, hey, make those doors wider rather than narrower. But it's your opinion that trying to expand the width of the door wouldn't necessarily have prevented this. I just want to make sure while we're in here trying to re-deal with the front facade and putting these garage doors, that that's not something that we need to take into consideration.
It is not. It is not.
Okay.
That would just run that price way up.
And I'm assuming because of the, relatively speaking, the lower cost, Ms. Cersei, this is something that we would just opt not to try to go through our insurance and try to have a claim, considering we've got funds that we're saving in another area. Okay, is it 50 now on that? Because at one time it was what, 25? But we went up, okay.
Are y'all good putting this on a consent agenda for Tuesday night?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Chief, a quick question about that fire truck.
Yes, sir.
I noticed the price of that fire truck was 500 and something thousand. Was that a refurbished truck or was that a brand new truck?
The one we just bought?
Yes.
That was a new truck. That was the one back in 2022 when we purchased the 4 engines.
Okay.
That was the cost back then.
Well, that was a bargain.
Big time.
Okay.
What they are now.
I heard that price and I thought, man, that's not the price of a new one now.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
A 10.6, the budget amendment we did earlier when Alicia was presenting the finances. And so then we have 10.7, which is an appointment to the Three Rivers Regional Commission. It has to be an elected official within the county, and Mayor Johnson, I was speaking with him. They have a senior citizens program. They have a lot of programs that use Three Rivers. I thought it might be nice if he was our representative. So are y'all good putting Mayor Johnson on as our representative? Okay, so that'll be on consent also. So everything will be on a consent agenda for Tuesday night except for the 10.3, the City of Carrollton TAD. So at this point,